Thank you, thank you. And again, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining May's Tenant Talk Live. Marsh, I think you're unmuted. Thank you. And welcome to Tenant Talk Live. And we'll go over the rules later, but just make sure that y'all are muted if you're not talking, but I really appreciate y'all for that. But again, welcome to this week's Tenant Talk Live. We're going to be mainly talking about security deposits today, and we did get, I think, like 1 or 2 questions in from folks in the registration, so I'm really excited to go through this conversation today. If this is your first time attending one of these, my name is Sydney, and I go by Sid. And I use she, they pronouns, and I'm a project manager for inclusive community engagement at the National Low Income Housing Coalition. And if this is your first time attending Tenant Talk Live, it's a meeting where we kind of come together with residents and tenants from across the country to connect with NLIHC, but also to connect with one another and share best practices and better ways to influence federal housing policies, as well as like leading in your local communities and how you can make a difference there. And this meeting is being recorded and is going to be uploaded to YouTube later. So if you can't stay the whole time, or if you want to share this with somebody afterwards, that'll be on our YouTube page afterwards. So today we have Lakita Steel joining us from New York. But before I pass it over to Lakita, I do want to go over some brief announcements and some legislative updates for everybody to be aware of. And the first thing is just sharing our community agreements from the beginning of the year. So I'll read through those really quickly. Awesome. Okay, so the first one that we have is the platinum rule, so treating others the way they want to be treated. So in other words, please consider how others might want to be treated and how that might differ from how you want to be treated. And then we have muting your mic except when speaking, listening with an open mind and empathy, and then taking up space and also giving space to others. And then just a reminder again that this Tenant Talk Live is being recorded and will be shared online. So if there's anything you don't want to be made public, just make sure that you don't share it here because we're going to publish it later. Awesome. Okay. So thank you so much for sitting through me reading that. But if you have like any feedback or if you want to add anything to that, you can always email me with your thoughts on the community agreements. And then this is a reminder that if you're signed up for NLHC emails, which you all should be, because when you register, we add you onto our email list, you should be receiving an email this Friday called The Connection. And that e-blast contains the recap materials for all of NLHC's like webinars and meetings. So if you'll be getting one this Friday that'll have the recording, the chat, any links that we share in that email. And if you are not signed up for those emails, we'll drop that link in the chat as well. And you can view last month's recap for April's Tenant Talk Live with the link in the chat as well. And then we have a really exciting, announcement is that we're starting the recruitment process for our next collective cohort. We actually have a few collective members on the call too, that are currently collective members and collective alumni. But for folks who aren't aware of what the collective is, it's a group of tenant leaders and community leaders with lived experience of housing insecurity, who work towards housing justice and racial equity within their neighborhoods and greater communities. And NLHC often collaborates with this group to inform our policy priorities to make sure that they reflect the needs of the lowest income households across the country. So, we do, like I said, we do have a few folks on the call who are collective members. So if you are a collective member and want to drop your email in the chat for folks to connect with you afterwards, you can feel free to do that. I forgot to update the link. I'm sorry, Gabby, but the one that's in there right now is one of like the older links, but the most up-to-date one I just put in the chat for you all. So the application will be on an online form, but we also put a PDF together separately so you can view all the questions before you fill it out on the form. But if y'all have any questions, always feel free to email me. That application process or that application will be open throughout the month of May. And then we'll close it out in June while we review the applications, and then we'll probably do interviews and do selections in early July. So exciting stuff. And then just a brief policy update for everyone. The Office of Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity at HUD released guidance recently this past Thursday on May 2nd to protect rental housing applicants from discriminatory tenant practices that could violate the Fair Housing Act. And while we know that like housing providers really should be abiding by the Fair Housing Act, this guidance really just clarifies that housing providers and especially tenant screening companies are expected to follow the provisions or the policies within the Fair Housing Act. So if you want to learn more about like what NLIHC's guidance is, we have that memo article in there, but we also have the guidance itself in the chat. And then the last thing that I just found out a few hours ago is particularly for folks who might be impacted by resident assistant demonstration or RAD conversions. So the Office of Capital Recapitalization at HUD is hosting office hours on May 20th at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So if you're impacted by a RAD conversion, these office hours are really meant to help you understand any rights you might have under those conversions. And it's going to be open to the public, and attendees will help answer any questions about resident engagement and also provide, you're welcome to join those and provide feedback on any topics you want to learn more about. So we'll drop the registration link for those office hours in the chat, and we'll also provide you with the email for RAD so that you can reach out to them if you have any questions. But again, that's specifically for tenants that are going to be impacted by resident assistance or rental assistance demonstrations. Cool. Awesome, awesome. And then lastly, again, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll try to make time at the end for folks to come off mute as well. But we just ask that you stay muted if you're not speaking. And if for whatever reason you're not able to make it to the mute button in time, we'll try to catch you instead, because we know there's probably folks trying to multitask as well, and we understand. But I will now pass it to Lakita Steels. And for folks who weren't able to catch the e-blast before, a native of Lakita Steels is a native of Long Island, New York. And she serves as a community advocate for clients with vouchers in her Long Island community and nearby Queens. She's also a board member of Mobility Works, where she used to be an intern at a real estate agency as well. So she has like a lot of history working, with tenant questions and complaints, but she also has like her own personal experience to talk about. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Lakita to take it away.
Thank you, Sid, for that introduction. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lakita. She already introduced me, so I'm just going to get straight into my talk. I chose the topic securing security deposits based on my personal experience. I am a housing choice voucher participant in Long Island, and 2022, the end of, I want to say it was December, I was in the process of moving through CDCLI, which is an organization that took over Section 8 that I was currently a part of. At that time, I was a part of in Nassau County. So I was transferring, pretty much porting my voucher from Nassau to Suffolk County. In December, when I was getting ready to move, I don't know what told me, but something told me when I went to pay, because the thing was, I was supposed to move. The anticipation was to move in January of 2023, but some of the paperwork didn't work out that way. I ended up moving in February. But being that I thought I was moving in January, in December of 2022, something just told me when I went to pay my rent to get a full detailed itemized printout of what my bill was. And I always, after I pay my rent, get a letter stating that my rent is paid up to date and, it's fully paid for so that there's no issues. And prior to that, in 2021, my grandmother lived in the same apartment complex as I did, and she passed away. And when she passed away, I went to go get her security and everything back because my sister and I were in charge of all of her her things. And what happened was they didn't want to give my grandmother security deposit back. So that made me have a mental note then. I did get it back though. But what made me do that was it gave me a mental note, and I said, you know what I'm going to do? When I move out, I'm going to make sure that that my security is paid in full because something just didn't process right in my head. And my grandmother had a housing choice voucher as well. And in addition to that, my sister, who used to live in the complex as well, who did not have a housing choice voucher, and who was an RN. So she made, a pretty good salary, and she was, paying fair market rent. She had issues getting her security deposit back as well. And she kind of pretty much, her and her husband had to threaten the landlords at that time so that she can get her money back. And I went in there and I spoke to one of the secretaries and I said, I'm paying this off. I didn't let them know I was moving or anything. I said, I'm paying my rent. I asked them for an itemized printout because I knew that I paid two separate security deposits. So when I first moved in, I had a 2-bedroom, which was about, I want to say 1540. And when I upgraded to a 3-bedroom, I had to pay additional $469, which added up to a total of $2,009. She gave me the printout. The printout said exactly what those securities were with the two exact separate dates and years. And it showed that my balance was $0 and that my rent was paid in full. She also gave me a nice letter saying my rent was paid in full. So January comes, I pay my January rent as well. So I get another letter and another itemized bill saying my rent was paid up to date. And then February comes, I finally move out. I go let them know in January, I said, I'm going to be moving. So I gave them the quote 30 days that they needed in order to get your full security back. I call and I said, okay, can you just let me know because I don't want to drive back and forth. When will I be able to pick up my security deposit? The receptionist said, oh, it takes 14 days. I said, okay, no problem. So I said, what I would do is instead of using my savings, I would use that $2,000 for my furniture to get reupholstered because I didn't want to throw the furniture away. And 2 weeks comes later, I want to say about February 15th, I made a call. I said, I am coming in. It's been 14 days to pick up my security deposit. She puts me on hold and she gets back on hold and says, he's going to cut you a check for $212. I said, I beg your pardon. She said, well, you might need to speak to him because he's saying that Section 8, remember this, Section 8 did not pay him some rent and they're going to take it from your security. I said, thank you. I hung up. I already was worked up, my anxiety was on 1,000. I drove straight there. I drove straight to the landlord's office. I go to the office. I ask to speak to the landlord. And he says to me, he comes up front, very nasty. And he said, well, Section 8 didn't pay. And because they didn't pay, you have to pay the rest of the rent. I said, that doesn't make any sense. Anyone with a housing choice voucher knows that the Section 8 or whatever voucher program you're with pays immediately on the first of the month, immediately. And if someone else has experienced otherwise, I don't know, but I know for a fact from my experience and others that they pay right away. So I'm already upset. He starts yelling at me, you're not getting your security back. At that point, I have my phone on record because I just had to cover myself because I just wanted to make sure I wasn't hearing things and I wasn't crazy. I immediately said, I'll be back. I'm going to call Section 8 and I'm going to get to the bottom of this because that doesn't make any sense. And why does my receipt say my rent is paid in full? Why do I have a zero balance? Something's not right. So I go home first. I go look through the whole printout that he gave me, and he gave me that day another printout. So I compare his printout to the printout that I got in January, right before I moved out. And I'm looking by line with a ruler, and I noticed that he altered the paperwork. He's changed some of the dates, saying that something wasn't paid. He didn't receive payment electronically through Section 8. So I start freaking out. I call Section 8. They tell me to call the Attorney General's office, Nassau, Suffolk. I call them. They give me a complaint form. Then they tell me to call Nassau, Suffolk Law Services. They couldn't help me. They said they don't deal with security, and now I'm freaking out. I call Fair Housing, and Fair Housing said there's nothing they can do. I'm one of those type of people, wherever it is, if I'm like the client or if I'm not the client, I like to keep close relationships with people. And thank God I had built oh, I'm sorry. I thought someone was talking. I build personal relationships with people that I trust. One of my old family self-sufficient coordinators used to work there with the Nassau County Section 8. And she assured me, she said, Lakita, that's not right. You're absolutely right. That's incorrect. She said, I'm going to give you someone's number to call. And at that time, CDCLI had bought over Nassau County, which someone, I guess my landlord already knew. And she told me that he can only go back, they only can go back a certain amount of years. So at first he told me the payments were from 2021. So I called the new Section 8, and which was CDCLI. I spoke to someone and they told me, no, we paid them. We can't send you the picture of everything. We can crop because, account numbers were on there and wire transfer numbers were on there, which I understood. And I just couldn't believe it. I'm like, this is not happening. This is not happening. I know $2,000 might sound little to some of us, but to me, it was a lot. It's my $2,000. Even if it was $12, I'm the type of person I would have fought for my $12, if you know what I mean. So I go back and I send him an email, and Section 8 sends him an email. I call, he doesn't answer. I call, he doesn't answer. He's like, oh, well, I'll be away. I'll look into it. Okay, now I'm kind of being patient. He gets back from the holiday that they were on. He comes back and says, I'm sorry, it wasn't 2021. It was 2018. So I said, that doesn't make sense to me, sir. 2021 to 2018. Now we're going back and forth on the phone. I hang up. I go in an email because now I need a paper trail of everything. I email him and I said, and I CC the person that sent me the proof. I said, now he's saying it's 2018. So I called my connection back, who used to work with Nassau County Housing. And she says, Lakita, he's saying that because since the new organization, took over Section 8, it only goes back a certain amount of years. So 2018, they won't have a recollection of it. So he's trying to screw you over. So now I'm really upset. Like my blood is boiling. And at this point, it's not even about the $2,009. It's about him. I feel like he was trying to insult my intelligence because I'm on a voucher. And it doesn't matter if someone has $10 they're paying out of pocket, $2,000 they're paying out of pocket, $3,000 they're paying out of the voucher. It's theirs. And I feel like that's kind of a discrimination, that you feel that someone would be not as intelligent enough to, do the math and put everything together to figure these things out. So she tells me to contact someone else. I call someone else in Section 8, and they were like, I can't help you. I can't find anything from 2018. So now I'm just I'm mad at everyone because I'm happy I moved and I'm in a better opportunity area. but now I feel like I don't have the closure from my old, complex that I lived in, and I wanted to get out of there, and my blood is boiling. I sent an email. I literally CC'd everyone that has interacted with me about this security deposit. And I let him know, if you do not have an answer for me by this day, I am going to take this above, and I'm going to take this to the courts. And we're going to handle this legally. Next thing you know, by April, I'm in court. We get to the court. He doesn't come. He sends an attorney. I show the attorney. I have like a thick envelope. I actually have it right here. I usually would have did a PowerPoint, but I'm more of a person that's conversational and I like to engage. But this was everything right here of all my records, emails printed out, and I had a little file, a little disc that I had where I had the recording on it with him arguing with me back and forth and lying on CDCLI and Nassau County Section 8. I go to court, I put everything in. He said, I need more time. I show him all the records. Even the landlord's the lawyer is kind of scratching his head like he wants to say he's in agreement with me, but obviously he can't because he's on their side and he's working for them. So he said, I need to come back. We come back. 3 weeks later, he said, oh, the attorney needs more time. And I'm just getting frustrated because I just moved. So all my savings really went into moving. And I'm like, I don't have money to go back and forth like this. This is getting annoying. It's a quick ride, a 30-minute ride, but gas is expensive. And I'm just like livid right now. He said, well, what do you want to do? We can wait or we can go to trial. He said, well, I had a death in the family. I need to handle da 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 da. This is the lawyer. So I'm kind of being okay with him. I said, okay, we come back. This is the last time. We come back. 2 weeks later, we come back. Now he's saying, oh, the landlord needs more time, the property manager, something's going on. And I look at him and I look at the judge, and he just sees the steam coming from my face. He said, Miss Steele, what would you like to do? Do you want them to come back or you want to go to trial? I said, I want to go to trial today, tonight. I do not want to come back here again. I do not. We go to trial. They ask me what I want to do. I show them everything. The landlord comes back. The lawyer comes back. I had everything printed out. He's sitting there looking at everything with me. He's taking pictures. I said, look at this date. Look at the bottom of this itemized bill printout and look at this. Look at these dates. Your client altered or photoshopped these documents and it's against the law. I said to him, he said, well, how do you know? I said, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. So I put my glasses on and I looked at him. I said, I'm representing myself. And I just want to let you know, sir, that I did take law before I decided to go to the schools that I went to. And I'm not an idiot. And you're not going to insult my intelligence. He looked at me. He starts flicking through the papers. And when I showed him that the letter said your rent was paid in full, and then he looked at the dates and the actual time stamps of the printouts, he walks away and said, could you just hold on for a second? I could hear him from the kind of like halfway through the hall. He calls the property manager, which was another one, a female who had no idea what was going on. He grabbed the phone. He said, I think you need to get down here now. We go back into the room. He said the property manager's on the way. I don't know how fast she was, how close she lived. She was there in 30 minutes. I showed her everything. I showed her the screenshots. I had the recording. I played the recording for her. She went back in. She said, sir, we're going to try to resolve this now, but I just need 2 nights. I need 2 nights and I will get back to you. She knew something was wrong. She said, I'm so sorry. I didn't know about any of this that was going on. She said, I got home that night. She said, send me everything. I sent, and thank God, I'll never forget this. My mentor, she's in here somewhere now. She taught me how to convert documents into a PDF from my iPhone, and I sent everything to her that night. I sent her everything. The next night she got back to me, she said, Lakita, and this is going into months now. Now we're into June. We're into June now. That's how much back and forth it was. She said, Lakita, I reviewed all the documents thus far. It looks like it's going to your favor. In my head, I'm feeling cocky and confident because I know, and I'm like, I know it's going in my favor. So I get a call literally the next morning from the attorney to pick up your check. And he said, I'm going to ask you to pick up your check. Can you sign this? And I wrote on the letter that they had me sign. I said, Lakita Steel will be picking up her check today at et cetera time on this date because this landlord, and I put his name, and the property manager did not want to give me my security back. And this was handled out of court because he knew. And I signed it just like that. So that's my story. And the moral of my story is, please document from the day you move into something, document everything, get a printout every month. Every single month you pay your rent because you never know, God forbid, someone could pass away or anything. Print everything out, get an itemized printout because you do not want to experience that. For someone to legally tamper with documents like that was utterly disgusting to me. And now with everything, not just rent, I document everything. So that's my talk for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lakita. Yeah, there were a lot of like comments coming out in the chat, and I was like, I was
Where
so engaged because it's just like unbelievable. But I'm sure that your experience isn't like a unique experience either. Like,
it
and it's
was
hard
really
too
bad.
because like some people don't have like the resources or don't have like necessarily like the knowledge to document like that. And that's like kind of where we come together as a community, right? But
Yeah, an email is always a great paper trail. It's always a great paper trail. So I suggest emailing everything if you could. Just print everything out, take pictures, email it to yourself if you feel like you might lose it. I had people saying, oh, Lakita, you might have to take this L, you might have to eat this loss. And I'm like, I'm not eating anything. I'm not eating anything because at that point, like my blood was boiling.
yeah.
I was venting to my friends. I'm in court, just like sitting there listening to other stories as they're telling the stories. I'm remembering other things that he said and I'm writing it down. So it kind of helped. That also helped as well. But as soon as I made that physical eye contact with the judge, he knew that I was not playing games and I was about business. And I said, sir, I am in school for my PhD. And I did let him know that I'm missing school, I'm missing classwork to be here for this. And it's not necessary. And he knows he owes me money.
Yeah, thank you again for sharing that story again, Lakita. We do have some questions and some comments in the chat too. Oh, excuse me. I'm like losing my voice over here, but the first question that I did, there were like Molly like dropped like some really good points in the chat that like there were some questions and they were just like some really good ideas. And I wish we could implement them all like right away, but I just want to shout out Molly because I know she had a lot of good thoughts in the chat there as well. But I think one that stuck out to me in particular was like some tenants will receive like a housing voucher but no money for a security deposit. So and I guess like this is like a learning curve for myself as well, but do you not receive like any money alongside your voucher for the security deposit? Like that would come straight out of your pocket, or how does that work?
Well, I can't speak for myself, but I know some people that have gotten security taken care of from the place where they receive a housing choice voucher, or they can get like a one-shot deal from maybe social service when they're moving in that will help them if they're in a situation where they can't afford like their first month's rent and security. There are resources out there that can actually help you. Usually, some agencies, they may have like a special fund for just that.
Yeah. And I think Carleone in the chat also put usually only emergency housing choice vouchers come with the security deposit,
Right.
other special programs.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah. And then folks, if you want to start raising your hands, if you want to like ask your question off mute, but I'll go ahead and answer some of the other questions that were dropped in the chat as well. But Reina asked, did you receive 2 to 3 times the amount because it was not returned to you in time?
No, if we would have went through the trial, if the trial would have finished, I would have received double. But they knew, that's why she went home that night and did her due diligence to make sure that didn't happen, because I think he probably would have ended up in trouble or without a job. Who knows? Because she was in awe when she got there and she opened up all the documents, and then I played the recording for her. She said, was I ever there when this was taking place? And I said, no, I've never saw your face ever in my life.
Yeah, that's honestly like very, very gross negligence. Yeah, I'm glad you were able to get what you got back though.
Thank
Even
you.
if it wasn't the
I was.
double.
It took me a while, and then the next month I finally got my furniture out.
Yeah, let's see. We have Carrie kind of following up on just documenting everything, saying that even if you talk on the phone, always follow it up in writing, keeping a journal.
Exactly.
Because
I
you'll
did.
never
I
know when
kept
you
notes
need
in
it.
my phone.
Yeah, that's really, really good advice. And then Beck in the chat also stating, the burden of proof should really be on the defendant and not the plaintiff.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree with that statement as well. I think it's um I can't remember. I think it was Carleone in the chat who said that, like the justice system like isn't always like the most just. And it's not really like leaning towards like you're in your favor. In this case it did, but like it won't always be that case for everyone.
It won't. And I'm not saying all landlords are bad, because they
Mhm.
absolutely aren't. But just from that experience, it just put a bad taste in my mouth. And even like it makes you not want to trust some people overall, like when you're conducting business, because to me, that was a form of conducting business.
Mhm.
I left the place perfect. I took pictures of the place, how I left the place perfect. If I left it damaged, that's a different story.
Yeah.
But I left the place perfect. I even left clothes for the super's workers that they could send to their countries and everything. I left nice bags for them on the porch for them. I left the place spotless.
Wow. And you see, I mean, I don't know if there's like research out there for that, but I feel like very often it's not the case that things are really like broken down like that. But
No.
like, and I think there was somebody, I'm gonna try to get to as many questions in the chat as I can, but I think somebody was asking about kind of going along what you were just talking about, using like the security deposit to like fix things. And does that usually get deducted at the end, or does that happen like throughout the entire time you're like at the apartment?
No, I think they use the security. They use the security pretty much at the end to deduct off if it damages or anything.
Mhm.
However, I've had a client that I've dealt with, I want to say about 6 years ago, where she was struggling, she was going through some hardship. And what they did was they took some of her security and applied it towards her rent so it wouldn't push her back further than she needed to be, so that she wouldn't have to go through like court or, like a pre-eviction process.
That's like really good to know too, in
But
case
I
of
don't know if everyone does that. That's the
yeah,
only thing I don't know.
yeah. But that's good to know though, because then people can use that as a reference and hopefully
Yes.
can use it. So Molly asked, some tenants go to legal aid, but nothing happens. Did you happen to use legal aid, or
Well,
have you
that's what I did. I
done?
went through Nassau Suffolk Law Services,
Mhm.
and I was told by someone in housing to use them, and they couldn't help. They said, we don't handle security, call the attorney general. And I'm like, okay, I called the attorney general, and all they did was give me a complaint form for New York City, New York State to fill out. And I'm like, he said that could take forever. And I'm like, okay, like 6 months is not going to help me. So I said, I just took it into my own hands. Fair housing, they really don't help with that as well. So I wish they have someone that could help with these type of situations, because after you move, like, you want, you think you have help, like, still, and you don't. Like, I'm just speaking from my case, from me moving into this with this other program helping me. I felt like, it wasn't their job to help me, but I feel like they should implement some type of program to help like that, because you don't understand. Like, I have very bad anxiety, and I felt it was like affecting my mental health. I really did. And
And
then
that's
just hearing feedback, oh, you're not going to get your money. I don't think you're going to get it. And just hearing him talk so nasty, I felt like he was about to take me out of like character. And I had to like humble myself. Okay, you're a doctoral candidate, you're a mom, you're a lady, you got to calm down a little bit, because I just felt myself ready to like explode. And I was like ready to call the cops on them and just go crazy. And I'm just being honest.
no, though, and that's really real too, because there's like so many, like somebody was saying it in the chat earlier, it's like a really traumatic like experience. And
It
like
is.
nobody, obviously, like if you're going through it, and folks who have gone through it are going to be able to empathize and understand like that it causes a lot of health concerns as well.
Yeah. I was really
But this,
having bad anxiety, like, it was so bad.
let me see really quickly if I didn't miss anything. I think there's a lot of comments in the chat, but I want to make sure I don't miss
I'm
any
reading some of the
questions.
comments. Thank you, everyone. I'm happy that I was able to share my experience with you all.
Somebody mentioned right to counsel as well, which is, something that a lot of like jurisdictions across the country are trying to pass. I think there's only, I can't remember how many states, but we could probably look it up and put it in the chat for y'all to see who has it, and maybe you can adopt it from there. Oh, there was a question from Bonnie Harper. Did the PHA advocate for you on your behalf since the landlord said they did not pay?
Not to me. I don't feel like they really did. They just said, "Oh, this is what we have," and that's it. They didn't send out like an email saying, "No, Section 8 always pays," so you can't, has to be a mistake. They didn't say anything. And some of the times I was calling them and they weren't even answering the phone. So I was really mad at everyone. I mean, I wanted to like let it out on everyone at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, and it can be really discouraging too
Because
to
I
go
felt like
through.
it was just me against the landlords, and like my back felt like it was against the wall, and it shouldn't be, because it's my money.
Mhm.
And I'm like, why is my back against the wall? It's my money. I felt like kind of undefeated, but I wasn't going to give up. I'm like, this man, he's not going to get away with it. And he's not even the actual landlord. He was one of the managers.
Mhm.
So that's what made it even worse.
Yeah.
And then he just talked to me so disgusting and degrading and tried to make me feel like belittled, and I was not standing for it. And I said, I don't know what you think. Just because I come from this complex and you think that people in this complex are poor or, not intelligent, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen with me. I'm not one of those people that are going to give up. So if we have to go to court, we will. And I guess he didn't think that was going to happen, and he didn't think I was going to know all these resources and speak to all these people. And I guess he was fooled and sadly mistaken.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Lakita.
You're welcome, Sid.
Um, there was one question that I think is kind of more of like a very like, I wouldn't say broad question, but maybe it's like kind of gen tangentially related to a conversation. But Janice asked for a brief summary of how to apply for a housing choice voucher, and we did have some nice folks in the chat just answering that. But if you folks want to look in the chat to see the answer to that question, but Carrie Hill just gave like a good explanation that it kind of varies for housing authority, and the biggest thing is just to find like those authorities, those public housing authorities within your area. um again, There's usually a wait list for those, but if you wanted to add anything to that as well, Lakita, you're welcome to.
Can you just repeat it? I was trying to actually find it so I can read it.
Oh, it's could you give a brief summary of how to apply for a housing choice voucher?
The thing with that is you just have to kind of look out for when they have the openings, and when the openings come up, you have to apply. I got lucky and someone told me about it. She might be in here. I don't know if she's in here. Years ago, I want to say in like 2002 and or 2001, and by no, it was 2005. I'm sorry. And then by like 2009 or 8, I had lived somewhere else, and then I moved back into the neighborhood that I was in. And my old neighbor, she actually called me, said, I think you have mail here and it's important. It's from like a housing, Section 8. So I ran over there and picked the mail up. I literally almost missed it by like 2 days. So it's always like a process. You have to pay attention to emails, join the groups that they have on Facebook and things like that, or social media that lets you know when they are opening up so that you could apply right
Yeah.
away, even if it's for Section 8, or if it's just a low income apartment complex. You just have to pay attention for those and kind of get in the groups or send out, emails, or you can call and ask around. But if you don't know, it's really hard. But as soon as you hear about it, just apply, and you just gotta wait, and you send the emails, you update. If you move, you let them know, and just pray that something will come through for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wish the system was built a little bit easier.
Yeah,
So it wouldn't have to be that difficult because it definitely does vary, I think.
it does. And I just don't know how every state is either.
Yeah. And then Marsh had a question. So, and I think you kind of covered this a little bit, but if you want to go into further detail, did you go to the property management company with the security deposit issue?
Oh yeah, that was the actual company. So the property management company, that was theirs. It's like family owned.
Oh, so it was like, was it like a
Except,
small?
yeah, the female property manager, she wasn't related to them.
I see. Okay, cool. Thank you. Let me see if there's anything else that I haven't missed. And feel free to raise your hand, folks, too, if you want to come off mute to ask your question. We might have room for a few more before we close out for the day.
Yes, the property management, someone just asked, does the property management work for the landlord? Yes, they did. There were two property managers. The female one was above the male one, and I didn't know who the female one was, but the male one was the one that was nasty to me that I was dealing with.
Thank you. Yeah. And everybody's being super, super helpful
Yeah, I see a
in
lot.
answering questions in the chat. Somebody said that Renee Summers had their hand up. It was that like a virtual hand up. I
Yeah, I
didn't
see
see it
it.
come up. I'm sorry.
I don't
But
know, but she looks like she's to the left of me.
Renee, did you have a question? Let us know. If not, we have somebody else who has a
And I
question.
see Miss Brown has a question.
Okay, we'll move to Mrs. B for now. But Renee, if you want to ask a question later, feel free to raise your hand. Go ahead, Mrs. B.
Raina asks how she can reach me. I will give her my email.
Oh, we can't hear you, Mrs. B.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
There you
Yep.
go, Raina.
Yep.
Yes, welcome, and thank you so much for your presentation. There was
You're
a question
welcome.
regarding the Section 8 vouchers. I strongly recommend that everyone go to their local housing authority and call the Section 8, the least housing department, and ask if they have any vouchers available. Are they working with anyone at HUD? And when will they have vouchers available? If not, and provide them with your contact information and ask how do they advertise when vouchers are available. but you start with your local housing authority since they are the administrators of the housing vouchers. There are some cities that offer Section 8 vouchers as well, but that's your first step. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown.
Yeah.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Mrs. B.
You're welcome.
And then Beck had another question in the chat, but just wondering if you ever found out whatever happened with the security deposits that he was pocketing, or if he got in trouble or went to jail.
At that point, I didn't even care, but you know, I still deal with people that live in the apartment complex. So I always make sure, you know, I instill it in their brain every time you get your rent receipt, make sure you get a printout, your rent is paid up to date. Make sure you get an itemized printout bill. So that way you know what your security was, because the fact that even that he was trying to keep my grandmother's and she was deceased was disgusting. So I said, you know what, with that part, I played it even. I said, we still have to clean out her apartment. We will stay for a month and clean out her apartment for her. It'll take us a month and then you can keep that. But had that not been the case, we would have been in court with that too.
Yeah.
I have other friends that lived there that was on vouchers that moved away and they had to threaten to get their security back.
That's ridiculous.
So it was rather voucher, non-voucher, fair, you're paying fair market rent. They give you problems.
Oh, Mrs. B, is it okay if we ask you to mute? We can hear you.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm on my mobile phone and I'm trying to figure this out.
It's okay.
Just one moment, please.
There's a question that I can't answer, but you probably can, or maybe someone else can. Are there programs for someone coming, you know, recovering from drug treatment program, who has a job now and trying to, you know, get established, you know, and build their credit?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I honestly can't think, like, I think there might be some programs that are more like locally or state-based, but it just depends on where you're at. But I can't think of one off the top of my head right now, but if you email.
I know the actual person, so you can, in the chat, so you can give me, if you find any feedback or information, you can email me as well.
Okay. Yeah, feel free to follow up with me as well.
And she just left her, Sid just left her email in there.
Yeah. And then we have Chief Mimi with their hand up. You want to go ahead and ask a question?
But Molly's right as well. You do need a 650 credit score in order to get approved for an apartment. That's just the standard.
Let me try to see if you can unmute now.
For Chief Mimi, can you unmute her, Sid?
Yeah, I'm trying to do it, but it doesn't let me. It just says ask to unmute. Sorry about that, Chief Mimi. Hopefully we can get you on here.
I can do it.
Oh, there you go.
There she is.
I hadn't said okay to the recording. You know, I have to say yes, I'm okay with being recorded, and I hadn't pushed that. I apologize.
Oh, no worries.
Okay.
So yeah, I wanted to. I'm gonna be brief, and I'm so sorry about what you're going through. We've put some groups together and a council together for many things, and one of them is about housing, low income housing, and particularly I'm concerned a lot about the language that is written in low income housing that doesn't give the what's, for example, the word tenant, you would like to exchange it for the word living, because a tenant, you can, according to the corporation, you can evict them when you want to because it's temporary. One of the things that we also advocate is that we learn which laws are available to us. For example, I'm just going to give you just a little example. What I posted here was 18 USC code, I think it's 101. When somebody is scheming to trick you or to conceal documents, you could have charged him with that and got much, much more, because I think that comes with at least, he would have to pay you more money, or I think it's at least 1 year in jail. I think if we would learn more about how we could protect ourselves with codes and statutes and policies and the law, I think we would have far less landlords that would take advantage of us based on the language that's written in the lease agreements, and especially concerning now with the built environment, where even especially for people with low income and using housing vouchers, even just the way the buildings are built, there's no protection for us. So I advocate that we do learn those codes and statutes and policies against them. That was it.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
Thank
much.
you, Chief.
Yeah, knowledge is definitely power, and I appreciate that. Cool. Okay, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. But again, if y'all have any questions, like, feel free to follow up with us afterwards. And Lakita, is it okay if we put your email in the chat as well?
Absolutely. I did, but you can do it as
Oh
well.
yeah, okay.
I did, but
I
I
did.
did it further up, so you can do it as well.
Yeah. And we'll make sure to include it in the recap email as well. But again, thank you so much, Lakita, for joining us. If there's like a last minute like thought or word that you want to leave the audience with, feel free to do it now.
Yes, my word is to you, do not let anyone discourage you, make you feel inferior. Please advocate for yourself. If there's no one there to advocate for you, just document, document, document. Do not let anyone ever insult your intelligence. I don't care if your rent is $5,000 with a voucher or without a voucher. I don't care if it's $2. Please advocate for yourself, because you do have your own rights.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And again, thank you to everybody who asked questions. Thank you to everybody who joined us today. I'll just go over just a few updates / reminders before we log off for the day. But for our next Tenant Talk Live, it'll be on June 3rd, 2024. And it'll be centered around disability justice. And we're gonna invite, we're gonna go back to the West Coast and have some of our folks who are in our network from Washington talk a little bit about that and the work that they do there. So if you want to register for for June, we just dropped that in the chat. And then for folks who weren't able to be here at the top of the call, we did just announce that we're currently recruiting members for our next collective cohort. And again, that is a group of tenant advocates and community leaders with lived experience of housing insecurity who work towards housing justice and racial equity in their neighborhoods and greater communities. And they also influence a lot of like our policy priorities and really help like chart our advocacy path and their own advocacy path as well. So if you want to be a part of that, please apply for the next collective, and we have an application guide there for you. And we do have folks who have been a member or are currently a member of the collective, so they can help you and answer any questions you might have about that experience. And yeah, as always, we're always looking for folks who, if you're interested in sharing your story in a written format, we do have our blog called On the Home Front. And we usually have like a tenant blog like once a month. So if you want to learn more about how to get involved in that, we also provide folks with a stipend for participating in that. So you can email us at outreach@nlhc.org. And then last but not least, you can always join our Facebook page if you want to connect with other folks who regularly attend these webinars. And yeah, feel free to email me if y'all have any questions. You can always email me if y'all want to connect or if you have any questions. And then Tiffany had a good question. How often can you submit a blog writing? We usually try to like give everyone a chance. So if you've written already, we usually try to space it out so that we can offer other folks an opportunity. And you know, there's space down the line and you're still interested, we can fit you in, but we really want to make sure that everybody gets a chance. So I guess a case by case basis. But thank you everybody again for joining, and we'll see you in June. Have a good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Thank you again, Sid.
Of course. Thank you.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Bye.